It works on the basis that people all have a little bit of instinctive, maybe psychic ability.
Yes.
And they're using words they may not realize what they're saying, but collectively there's a message. And so it's been gathering and deciphering this information for 15 years. They claim that they predicted 9/11. They just didn't know exactly where. But they knew something was coming and the magnitude of the event. Well, they're now saying something's coming in November of this year, right after our elections. They're specifying November 8th, 9th, and 10th, that is going to be so traumatic that it's going to put us into a tailspin that'll take us 6 months to get our heads above ground to figure out what happened. Now, that's pretty scary. Does that mean Israel's going to, nuke Iran? Does that mean the Third World War is going to start? Who knows? But there is some sense to the date. Maybe certain powers to be are holding off their actions until after our U.S. elections, because that's right after our election, the day after or whatever. So that it doesn't affect our politics here. Who knows? Who knows? So unfortunately, we won't have our network built by November, but we will have several facilities that will be completed. And right now we have about 5,000 applications from around the world, and we're processing those applications, putting people into escrow for their various shelters.
What does it take to open escrow? $50,000 for an adult and $25,000 for a child from 16 and under? How does it work?
That's our standard price, but they don't have to come up with that money in advance. What we require is a deposit of $5,000, a fully refundable deposit for a reservation.
Right.
And that goes to escrow. We never see the money, so it's at no risk to the buyer. It sits there until we get a critical mass of buyers, and we then, when we do, we proceed to the next step, which was we provide them with purchase and sale agreements, which they review and go over all the documents and the reports and the engineering and so on as they wish. And if they decide they still want to proceed, then that's when they fund the balance of their escrow, their funds. And then it sits in escrow until we complete the shelter. That's when we go ahead and do the complete provisioning of some of these shelters that are already built. And when we do our job and we complete our responsibility, we close escrow and hand the keys over to the association of owners for each respective facility. So their money's never at risk. We don't get paid until we perform. And during that process, they as pending owners or buyers are given the opportunity to do a walkthrough of the facility before the close of escrow. It's very much like buying a condominium or any other property. The process is the same, and the responsibility is the same. But let me point out some exciting news. We've acquired a very large facility in Nebraska, which I don't know if you realize the strategic opportunity of Nebraska, but Washington reportedly has cited Nebraska, Omaha, as the new White House location or location for the government should there ever be a problem with Washington itself.
Wow, I thought that was going to be Colorado. That's interesting.
Well, I hear it's Omaha.
Wow.
But it's all in the same zone. What I hear is in fact Omaha. And we're very near to Omaha. We're I won't give you an exact location,
right,
north of it, and which is away from all the targets. If you look at the target maps for potential nuclear strikes, there is an abundance of them in northeastern Colorado and southwestern Nebraska. And the reason is that's where Cheyenne Mountain is.
Right.
And most of the nuclear missiles that we have our sites. There's another one south of Kansas. There's another one cluster up in Idaho and Montana. So even though they're out in the middle of the remote nowhere, that would not be a good place to be unless you're extremely fortified. I understand that's where President Bush was taken at 9/11, was to Cheyenne Mountain, to NORAD. And he ran operations from there for a short stint. But we're on the other side of the state, and we think it's the central United States. It's pretty much geographic center. But here's the good news. Because this facility is so large, we're going to accommodate 1,000 people there. That's one person per 100 square feet. And we've reduced the price on that specific facility to $25,000 per member, man, woman, or child. So that's cutting the cost in half, and that's about as close as we can get it.
Are you saying that construction begins when there's enough people that have committed to that particular area? Is that
Correct.
What you're saying?
Well, let me explain. We will build shelters anywhere on the planet when we get a critical mass of members ready, willing, and able to proceed. We cannot build them on spec in advance of knowing that we've got real buyers committed in escrow. And so our task is to find groups of 200 plus people in each location. Our smallest facility accommodates 200 people. The one in Nebraska is already built. It's fully turnkey. It's fully operational.
Does that mean it's already filled up?
No, it's built as a shelter. We have not gone in and done the retrofit, which is minor, adding of furniture, fixtures, equipment, food, fuel, and supplies. So we haven't done think of it as this, think of an office building that's already built, and you have a vacant floor, and a tenant comes along and says, we want this and that, and you have to go in and then just build out the tenant improvements. So we have our shell. We have a fully operational shelter. It is nuclear blast proof. It'll take a 50 megaton blast within 10 miles, which should never happen because it's not in a strategic, targeted area. And so at this point, we don't have to do an awful lot. That shelter could be ready in as little as 3 months. And so we're putting people in escrow. We're filling up the critical mass at this point. And once we hit the break even, we go ahead and proceed on that one, which will happen pretty soon. Just to give you an idea, we sold 26 shares for that shelter yesterday.
Got it.
So that's huge. One individual bought 20 for himself and his extended family. Wealthy individual. He was all cash, no questions asked. We're trying to focus as many people to that side as possible to get that one done. That is effectively the U.S. version of our European shelter that I mentioned a bit ago.
Fantastic. I notice you also have a shelter in the Mojave Desert and in Barstow. At least one's being prepared for, correct?
Well, it's in similar condition. That one's smaller. It's the smallest of the network. It only accommodates 132 people. It's not in the most ideal location, meaning it's in the desert. But it's very strategic. It's about halfway between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And unfortunately, I know you live in Southern California as I do. You don't want to have a shelter underneath ground zero, which means you don't want to be in greater LA or greater San Diego.
Right.
You have to be away. You have to be 100, 150 miles away. And if we go 100, 150 miles, east, we end up in the desert. And so we don't want to be any further than that, from a convenience point of view. And that's where most of our shelters are located, within 150 to 200 miles of the major metropolitan area they serve. But those shelters, because they're smaller and different type of construction, those are going to cost our members more than the Nebraska side.
Who do you think the optimal clients are for this venture, for this kind of preparation? Who are the people that are buying in your experience so far?
Well, it's interesting. It's your neighbor next door, probably. We and I don't mean to be facetious or sarcastic, but it's average people. It's not the elite. The elite already are on that government list or have their own shelter that they've paid for. I'm sure Bill Gates has one or more. What we're doing with these shelters is selling them fractionally with what's called fractional ownership. Therefore, we're taking a $10, $20 million structure. We're dividing it by the number of owners to be, and by sharing the cost, we bring it down to a very affordable price. If I told you that your neighbor had a small underground shelter in their backyard, nuclear blast proof, left over from the Cold War or newly built, you wouldn't think much of it. You probably wouldn't think they were extremely wealthy. and yet that structure is going to cost them $250,000 to $500,000.